Hello everyone, I'm finally here. The last video of my MLP Reviewing Marathon, and the big reason as to why I wanted to do that whole thing in the first place. Seriously, if I could pick a review that I would get known for, I hope it's this one. Okay, for those who don't know, about 9 months ago, I reviewed Tanks for the Memories, and it is complete garbage. The episode and the review. It was more of a bad, unfinished first impressions video, and I didn't have any clear thoughts, and I didn't figure out all the reasons as to why I have such a strong opinion on this episode until months later. And now, I hope I can cover all of my bases here, and if I miss something that I wanted to talk about, I'll mention it in the comments. Why am I doing this? Because I think Tanks for the Memories is by far the most overrated episode of this whole show. An atrocious episode that doesn't deserve any of the praise that it's gotten. I mean, we must be watching a different episode because I don't really see anything admirable coming from this episode. Now, how far off am I from the general consensus? Well, to quote Voice of Reason, this episode could have been a complete disaster if Rainbow Dash was portrayed unsympathetically. Yeah, Voice, we've got some polar opposite viewpoints. You gave it like a 4 out of 4, I'd give it like a 0.5 out of 4. I mean, or less. Now for this review, I'm going to change up how I've been doing this, just a little at least. I believe that in order to get my points across, I need to look at the episode sort of in its entirety, like how most other reviewers talk about episodes, like, this episode starts off da-da-da-da-da, that type of thing. I'm not really going to be sticking to that, but I'll try to use it as a little bit of format. Also, if you like this episode, that's perfectly fine. In fact, if you have some counter arguments for me, please, feel free to say them in the comments. I will also address some of the positive comments and counter arguments at the towards the near end of the video. And I gotta say, I have spent the most time working on this script than any of my other videos, and I need to make sure as my argument is as good as it can get. That's why this episode, I mean, just look at how long I've been talking about the preamble of this whole thing. That's why I'm splitting this up into multiple parts. I mean, this is twice the length of my Rainbow Falls script, and it will be too long for just a 10-minute limit on my iPhone video recording. I'll then have to put all the parts together on YouTube's video maker editor thing. Okay, I've wasted enough of your time. If you want to read along, I'll leave a link to the script in the description. Let's get started. Okay, so my first problem with this episode arose when I was just reading the premise. I mean, from that alone, a lot of bad thoughts were going into my head. But I did try to stay optimistic and hope this episode didn't hit those and it would be really good. Sadly, my optimism quickly faded, and when I watched this episode, it hit pretty much all of my predictions, and they will become clear as this review goes on. Now, the episode starts off right at the end of that racing that happens during that Fall Weather Friends episode. Sorry about that stutter. To signify the transition from fall to winter. And we see Rainbow and Twilight looking at Tank, and he appears to be very tired. And then Rainbow goes to Fluttershy about this, and Fluttershy then tells Rainbow that Tank is getting ready to hibernate. Okay, so here's where my problems start to come in with the episode. I mean, why does Rainbow Dash not know what hibernation is? Didn't we already go through winter after she received Tank in the form of Heartswarming Eve? And before any of you say, hey, this could have taken place before then, where's your proof? There's no evidence to this at all. I mean, if we believe this, then if we go with that argument, then another problem shows up. And this is one of my biggest issues with the whole show in general. And that carries through with this episode. The timeline is fucking horrendous in this show. God damn, there can be episodes which contradict what previous episodes have done or stated, like Appaloosa's Most Wanted and Bloom and Gloom. And then there's also the formula of just having big villains come back after their actions 1,000 years ago, and just using that as a lazy plot device, like with Discord, T-Rex, Sombra, Nightmare Moon. Seriously, what the hell was going on back then? I mean, all we needed was one line of dialogue at the beginning of the episode to signify that it takes place at their first winter or something like, yeah, I remember Tanks and my first winter together. How hard is that? And then it gets to the point in the episode where Rainbow Dash is getting really sensitive to the topic of hibernation. And it's pretty obvious where the episode is now going. Now I'm at the point where I have to talk about the 5 stages of grief, because this is definitely a big part of the episode. And here's my main problem with them, and pretty much carries into one of my biggest issues with the episode. Rainbow Dash herself. She is too fucking unlikable. I just gotta say it out right now. She is really unlikable in this episode. I mean, her moments are, at some of these points, are so over the top that it becomes so aggravating to watch. It's not funny. I don't understand how people can find this humorous. You see, to do over-the-top moments right, there is a line you don't cross where it gets to from over-the-top to really annoying type of bit. And this goes way over that line. Either that or you need a straight man to balance the comedy out. I mean, this is very apparent during the moments with the 5 stages of grief and why they don't really work. I mean, denial is shown as, man, this pet expert knows nothing about pets. Fuck her. Anger is shown as, you murdered my parents, I'm going to fucking kill you. And then there's also another point which pretty much goes to sabotaging the Cloudsdale Weather Factory. What could possibly go wrong? Now, if you're thinking, oh, you just don't like this episode because you don't like Rainbow Dash, and it may be apparent for some people, but not for me. You're way more off base than you think. You see, Rainbow Dash is my favorite character in this whole show. Out of the main 6, at least. And normally, I really like seeing her over-the-top emotion moments. They can be done really well. Like in Daring Don't with her fangirling over her, and then the mysterious mare duel when it shows Fang getting to her head. Yeah, I just mentioned a compliment to the one of that episode. Come at me! I get that all of this is mainly supposed to be for comedy. That brings up another problem that I have. What the hell am I supposed to feel for this episode? Am I supposed to laugh at how incredibly stupid Rainbow Dash's emotions and actions are? Am I supposed to feel sympathy for her or relate to these situations, what she's going through? I don't know. I feel like the episode is trying to balance all of them, but it just ends up coming together like a cluttered mess. I mean, okay, I guess I should mention the comedy right here. I don't like it. I mean, this episode was not enjoyable at all. A lot of people said that this was a very enjoyable episode with great humor, but I have no fucking idea what they're talking about. I mean, I should like it due to the amount of new facial expressions and references that are said throughout the whole episode. I mean, like that, but I don't find it any funny. I felt the Who's On First joke reference wasn't really funny, it's just there. And the Game of Thrones reference was really forced in. And plus, South Park already beat you to that joke. Oh, and you already did it before. Now you're just hammering it in again. I don't get it. Okay, so now I'm going to transition to the second part, like I said. So when you see me just doing this, reaching the stop the video, that means my limit is almost up and I'll be continuing quickly. So, okay. So, another problem I have with Rainbow in this episode is that she thinks nothing through, and no one balances anything that she does out. I mean, see, to do this right, you need to have the main character have inner conflict, which is the episode thoroughly lacks. Rainbow would need to think, is this really the best thing that I can do? Is this the best that is for Tank? Is that the best thing I can do for him? And then find at least somewhat understandable reasons to keep going. But we don't get any of that. It's just straightforward. Too straightforward. I mean, this alone would have made the episode better, in my opinion. But I know that Rainbow Dash isn't that smart. But this takes it to a whole new level. But I expect more than just, I'm going to do this and nothing bad will happen from it. Seriously, why was it that hard to have her think something through? I mean, this is just really stupid, even for Rainbow Dash. Well, she doesn't think anything through, like I said, and then she gets the idea to stop Winter from coming. And she goes through with this. Now, this is obviously a terrible idea. Especially seeing as how much animal life and their ways of living that you would be pretty much just destroying. And this is a part that I easily predicted what would happen after reading the episode's premise. Rainbow uncharacteristically freaking out over something so little and taking insane steps to have her way. Oh gee, like a spoiled brat. Yeah, not good. So now we get to the point where at the episode song, I'll Fly. And like One Bad Apple, I will say it is the best part of the episode. However, I don't think it's as good as that song. And to see people call it one of the best songs of the show, I don't get it. I mean, yes, it does have some pretty decent instrumentation, some very good animation at times, and Ashley Ball is still a good singer. Although I don't really like the use of auto-tune over her voice. I mean, she's good enough without it, so that makes it kind of feel unnecessary and slapped on. My main issue is with the lyrics. And I can sum it all up by just looking at this one line. I know it's wrong, but what does it matter? So pretty much, it's all, what I'm doing is wrong, I know it's wrong, but I'm gonna do it anyways. God, I hate that trope. I hate it when shows do that. Why do they keep doing this? Okay, so now the episode's at the point where Rainbow Dash is seeing that her plan isn't really working that well, and now she gets the idea to try and sabotage the weather factory, and she ends up destroying it. It should be noted that she almost kills Tank again. Yeah, that's something that becomes very frequent in the episode, almost killing Tank. Yeah, she's doing it for him, my ass. And also, she receives no punishment, felt no guilt, and no one called her out for any of these actions. I mean, this isn't just a problem with this episode, and seriously, why is this a problem to begin with? Why is it so fucking hard for this show to give characters punishment for their actions? I mean, this is the same problem I had with Applebutt Season and Swarm of the Century. And to some extent, Lesson Zero, but at least that last episode had the character feeling regret for what she did. But for some, none of this is a problem. Why? So, let me get all this straight. In this episode, Rainbow messed up the lives of many different animals, destroyed the weather factory with the motive of sabotaging it. She almost killed Tank a couple times in the process, was very unlikable throughout the whole episode, and she felt no guilt, regret, or remorse after doing all of this, beyond thinking, my plan didn't work, boo-hoo. And no one calls her out for any of this. Why is this okay? Now, most people just seem to point at the only problem being that her not getting punished, but that's not it. There's the fact that she doesn't feel anything for any of that. No regret, no guilt. How the fuck is this a sympathetic character? I bet I can hear someone saying, "Oh, you don't like that because you can't relate to that. You don't know that because you've never had a pet die," or some other bullshit counter-argument. Defending that episode. Okay. One, just because you can't relate to it doesn't mean that it's good. Secondly, I should be able to relate to this, because I had a pet that died. Now, it's time for me to get a little personal. I'll be right back. Just wait a second. Okay, so, back in 2001, I got my first pet. She was a black Pomeranian dog, and she was born on the exact same day as me, just 3 years after when I was born. This is her right now. That's my dog, my old dog. For a long time, she was probably my best friend. Since I was a very shy kid, I was never really good at socializing, probably due to me having Asperger's syndrome. I really loved her. As you probably know, all life comes to an end. And hers did. On the first Saturday of June 2015. She was going to turn 14 that year. Her health has been getting progressively worse, and it had come to the time where she had to be put down. And that was a very sad day. To this day, like 9 to 10 months afterwards, I still miss her. Now, even with that, I should be able to relate to this. Even with that, the episode was already out, and I was already forming negative opinions in the episode. I wonder now, can I understand the praise of this episode now that something like this has happened to me? No, it got worse. And I was now insulted by this episode's watered down, poor, shitty excuse of a death metaphor. With all that said, I get that the writers, Cindy Morrow and the rest of the writers, probably had their hearts in the right places. And now, I've got to explain why I don't like the death metaphor. And since it's a tricky subject, I'm going to have to be more careful with my wording here. And just a second. Okay, last part. We are now at the third act. And death metaphor time. Before I get that, I just gotta say, the whole scene where Rainbow is crying is incredibly annoying. And it just drags on for way too long. It just keeps going and going and going, and when you think it's almost over, the others jump in and start crying. And it keeps going and going and going. It's just so fucking annoying. And because I can't care about any of these characters or what they're going through, it just makes it even harder to sit through. But my main issue with the whole death metaphor is this. Hibernation is a terrible way to convey death. The main problem here is time. Time length. Since hibernation lasts only like 3 months. This does not work with Rainbow's crazy overreactions. Like I said earlier, this would work if she had to give up Tank for a few years. That I can understand why anyone would get emotional over. But this? Fuck no. You're going too crazy even for Rainbow Dash. This is the equivalent of having a little girl having a temper tantrum because she can't get a toy that she wants until Christmas. Rainbow's just too unlikable. And because of the problems that I said throughout this review, this leads to me not being able to sympathize with what Rainbow is going through or care about her going through any of this. It's too unrealistic. Overall, mixing hibernations with emotions and actions are so over the top and insane. just do not work. Not only that, but everything she does in this episode is unjustifiable. That is my biggest problem with trying to understand the positive reaction to the episode. I don't understand how you guys can justify any of this. I mean, all of this makes me think, did I miss something? I mean, especially when Rainbow was going through acceptance, the last 5 of the 5 stages of grief. With everything that's happened in the episode, I have no idea how anyone can justify all these actions, metaphors, or whatever the hell this episode does. I mean, if I can give any credit to the episode, is that the ending, I guess, was kind of nice. If there's anything that I could say was kind of cute in the episode, that was it. I mean, nothing really else. There you have it. I'm done. Finally. Now you know why I can't fucking stand with this episode. Actually, I'm not done. This is usually the part where I say my conclusions, but not yet. Now, as you've seen through this review, I haven't addressed too many of the compliments that other reviewers and some of you guys have said about this episode. I wanted to save this for last, so I can state my counter-arguments all in one place. Now, you're probably asking how will this work? Well, I'm pretty much just going to state the name of each reviewer that I'm talking about, or just people in general, and their argument, then I'll put my 2 cents on the issue. Just please know that I like all of these guys I mentioned. I'm only mentioning a couple, because I don't want to go overboard. Only a couple counter-arguments and reviewers. And I'm not trying to disgrace any of them, or their opinion. They have a right to it. Please do not be a complete idiot about this. I just want to explain my opinion better. Hope to get you guys to understand it a little better. And I won't be looking at every argument defending this episode, just a couple of the ones that stood out for me. And I don't want to dwell on this too long, so get ready to want to kill me more. Let's begin. Okay, so Golden Fox said in his review pretty much on the motivations of Rainbow Dash is that she's doing it all for Tank. No she wasn't. If you obviously look at the whole episode, I mean, this is all for her selfish motivation. And she did all of this so she could play with her pet just a little more, who all it wanted to do was take a fucking nap. I mean, even for Rainbow Dash, this is really selfish. I know I've said that phrase a couple times, but that is my big issue. Everything that she does is insane, even for her. Now, about the part where Rainbow doesn't really get punished for any of this, some people and reviewers do try to defend this, but most of the arguments I saw really are very weak in my eyes, and it still isn't justifiable. I mean, one argument is that no one saw what Rainbow did. If that's the case, then this was some pretty bad dramatic irony. I mean, also, you think that her friends would question her about this whole thing since they saw her starting to break down over Tank hibernating? I mean, you think a good friend would check up on that person to see if they're alright. And like I said earlier, that's what this episode needs. A straight man to balance this out. And then there's also the scene where Fluttershy tells Rainbow that she's gonna have to spend the winter petless. I mean, many reviewers, like Josh Scorcher, have complimented the scene and her character for this whole thing. All I can say is, so what? Really, any one of the other characters could have said this and the episode would be really unchanged. It doesn't really add anything to the episode or Fluttershy. For character progression, I think Scaremaster would do a lot better job at showing her progressing. This one moment doesn't really change anything about her. Now I'm done. Another thing that I can only give credit to this episode is for having some pretty good animation at times. It does very well in that department at points of the episode. Other than that, nothing. It has a predictable, bad premise, very poorly executed metaphors, morals, 5 stages of grief, etc., and a terrible portrayal of Rainbow. The rest of the characters don't do shit for her, and they really should be. Yeah, this is one episode where they don't really have much of a part, and they really should have. And it overall was just a very unenjoyable, frustrating, and really disappointing experience for me. Not the worst episode of the show, but it's up there. I think I've said enough about this episode, and I gotta applaud you guys for resisting the urge to kill me. Good job. Good job, guys. Now, this whole MLP Reviewing Marathon has burnt me out on reviewing MLP, so I probably won't be looking at it for a while, at least until I have something to say about the new episodes in Season 6 that will be coming out. I just saw the season premiere, and I didn't really have much else to add to it, so nothing there. Until then, please keep watching my other animation and country music reviews until that happens. Please, please watch my reviews. They're getting no views. I'm so desperate, please. We'll see y'all later.